Alright guys, you know that we have to talk about this at some point. I can't be the only one here thinking that the pills make absolutely no sense in American Horror Story Double Feature. And in fact, I know I'm not the only person because a lot of people in the comments section has been echoing the exact same things that I've been thinking and talking about for the last couple of weeks now. And while I do want to highlight and talk about some of the comments that I've received about those little black pills, I wanted to direct your attention to the most succinct description of what they are that we've gotten thus far in this season.
But to lock up the creative mind, we also have to understand how to unlock it. The occipital lobe. Talented people have denser, more numerous clusters of neurons in that area. So I started developing a drug to target that area. Made the neurons in that part of the brain fire at 10, 50, 1,000 times faster and more frequently than they usually do. We started testing it on primates, and yeah, it worked. On some of the apes. The ones who tested higher on cognitive tests before we gave them the medicine. I think the medicine has different effects on creative and non-creative people. It's almost like the non-creative ones can tolerate their lack of talent until they're confronted with it.
So yeah, there's a whole lot to unpack there, and I feel like we should start at the easiest place, kind of breaking down what the occipital lobe of the brain actually is. And you know what guys, I'm just going to say it off the bat. I am not a scientist in any way, shape, or form. I don't study the brain, nor do I have any real inclination as to what is and is not true. Everything I'm going to be talking about here is strictly from Google, so if you have way more information than I do, then please make sure to go share your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. I'll make sure to read them. So on first glance, in pretty much any basic Google search, you'll find at least the basic concept of what an occipital lobe is in the brain. As the chemist states in the clip, it is an area at the very back of the brain, and genuinely they thought it was only connected to the visual part of the brain, but more recently they've tied it together with a lot of different things, knowing that that one part of the brain might be communicating with a whole lot of other parts of the brain, thus helping it tie together some of the functions that I found. These include mapping the visual world, which helps with both spatial reasoning and visual memory, determining color properties and items in a visual field, assessing distance, size, and depth, identifying visual stimuli, particularly faces and objects, transmitting visual information to other brain regions so that the brain lobes can encode memories, assign meaning, craft appropriate motor and logistic responses, and continually respond to information from the surrounding world, and finally receiving raw visual data from perceptual sensors in the eye's retina. So right off the bat, we know the occipital lobe has a lot to do with vision and perception of the world. There's also a sense that this part of the brain communicates visual stimulus to the rest of the brain and helps us perceive the world around us. Or at the very least, and again, I know nothing about the brain, so I might be reaching here, but it does seem like this is something that would help us visualize something imaginary, like say writing a book or making a painting or other artistic things that we've seen expressed in American Horror Story, Red Tide. There's also the assertion from the chemist that the apes who had cognitive tests that were higher than normal are the ones who reacted positively to taking the drug. And quite frankly, I'm not going to spend a couple of hours looking up exactly what a cognitive test is supposed to reach in terms of the brain. Really, the only thing I know about it is
person, woman, man, camera, TV.
Regardless, I don't think a cognitive test is only meant to measure the occipital lobe of the brain. However, just based off of everything that we went over, it does seem at least a little bit connected, so I'm going to give the show a slide there. Again, for the third time, I don't study this thing for a living. If you do, please make sure to share your thoughts and opinions in the comments. Best one will get pinned. So right now, based off of everything that we've gone over and everything that I've bothered to look up for this video, I'm willing to give the show a pass for the pseudoscience just to make the pills make sense. Nevertheless, there is one lingering question I have when it comes to the way the pills are described and the people who take them. And that is, what exactly does the pill elevate in individual people? This is where I want to briefly focus on some of the more succinct comments I've gotten on some of my videos in order to help prove my point. This one comes from Megan Chambers saying, talent, creativity, ambition. These are three different things, but the episode seems to use them interchangeably as the thing you need for the pills to work. Because the pale man was a good singer, so he clearly has talent. But the chemist talks about the difference between creative and non-creative people, then also tells him that he's untalented and that he doesn't have what it takes. implying his lack of ambition. So which is it that you need? I really like this comment, so I pinned it to the video in which it was made, and then it started somewhat of a back and forth between the commenters, and I'll go through them briefly here. You're making the same mistake that many of the characters in this season are making. They are confusing being creative with being talented. Talent doesn't necessarily mean you're creative, it just means you're good at playing someone else's material. That doesn't bode well for Alma, who hasn't written any of her own music, even under the influence of the pill. She only plays music that others have written. I think this is a really good point because one of the things that I've mentioned, especially if I'm falling down the same rabbit hole as the original commenter, is that Alma really does seem to be the only one with any true talent. In fact, they have said it in this season already, indicating that she is truly the most talented person in Provincetown.
She's more talented than the three of us put together.
However, despite any of that so-called talent, she's the only person in Provincetown that we've been seeing taking the pill who hasn't created anything of note. She's simply reproducing something that's hard to play for other people. And unlike the commenter's assertion that it doesn't bode well for Alma, there doesn't seem to be any inclination that she is in fact being badly affected by the pill and will turn into a pale creature anytime soon. And given the fact that episode 5 gave us a little bit of a mini time jump, it seems unlikely that that's going to happen to her at all. I mean, maybe the whole thing is a lie and it has nothing to do with talent, but more with ambition. Remember, the singer was a nice guy, non-violent, and look what it did. But Belle said she's not a good person, and it brought that out. I'm wondering if it's more of a way of weaning out who's ambitious. For all we know, the chemist is lying. How do we know that's the truth, you know? This is probably the most succinct argument that we could possibly have for the pills at this point. It has nothing to do with talent or creativity, but more focused on ambition and what the people want. Inadvertently, this has also been echoed by various characters throughout the season, and pretty much proven in episode 5 with Alma's assertion that Doris could take the pill and simply become creative, while she's been asserting the entire time that her mother has absolutely no ambition or no drive to do what she really wants to do. So as far as it stands, I'm really going to have to agree with Christy Bryan's assertion that the pill has more to do with ambition than it has anything to do with creative talent. The only problem with that is pretty much everybody that we've seen take the pill and hasn't been affected by it negatively has only been doing artistic things like writing, drawing, or even playing music. And perhaps episode 6 or something in Death Valley can help explain that a little bit more, indicating that the people with ambition aren't just creative but also politicians and the like. But until then, the pills don't really make sense. It would seem like the science that they've created in order to explain how they work ends up butting heads with the story that they want to tell. Maybe it's just me, but when we're breaking it down between talent, creativity, and even ambition, the only difference that I see between Alma and the very first pale creature that we're introduced to in the flashback episode is that Alma is outwardly ambitious, so much so that she's willing to tank her own mother in order to get what she wants. And the singer, being a non-violent individual, simply couldn't handle what was being awoken within him. Considering the fact that the show has gone out of its way to express that its most talented individual is the only person who's simply recreating something instead of creating it herself, while simultaneously showing the downfall the very first uncreative person to ever take the pill and thus devolve into a pale creature, it seems like there's a genuine inconsistency on how the pills work. And unfortunately, this entire part of the season is hinged on knowing how those pills work and what they bring out in the individuals who are taking them. So as far as I'm aware, I don't think the pills right now make sense. Maybe it gets resolved in the last episode of this part of the season, maybe it gets resolved in Death Valley, but I want to hear y'all's thoughts and opinions about the black pill and whether you think it makes sense or not. Tell me in the comments section. I hope everyone is having a fantastic day. It's been real.